Welcome to Revolutionize Your Retirement Radio, bringing you insights and strategies to help you create a magnificent and fulfilling second half of life. Here's your host, certified professional retirement coach and best-selling author, Dr. Dorian Mintzer.
I want to invite everybody, welcome everybody today, to my Boomers and Beyond program. This is the fourth Tuesday Revolutionize Your Retirement Interview with Expert series. And I'm Dorian Mintzer, founder of the series and host and owner of revolutionizeretirement.com. So anyway, let me just get the show on the road now. Joy Loverde. Did I pronounce that right, Joy?
Oh, beautifully. Like the Italian version.
Well, you spelt it out for me today, so I was hoping I would be able to say it right. Joy has a reputation for being a path carver and a visionary when it comes to active aging. She's author of the bestseller, The Complete Eldercare Planner, and also her more recent book, which is Who Will Take Care of Me When I'm Old. She's an expert media source, product spokesperson, keynote speaker, and mature market consultant. She's frequently in the news, and you may have seen her on the Today Show or read about her in the Wall Street Journal. Today, she's looking forward to sharing strategies on cultivating trusting and long-lasting friendships as we anticipate the need to rely more on each other as we grow older. And I haven't met Joy yet in person, but I've met her on the phone, and she's delightful and wonderful. And I have to tell you, I didn't yet read your first book, but I have read the Who Will Take Care of Me When I'm Old. It is a phenomenal resource that I truly recommend to people. Joy has a lovely writing style, and I have to tell you, she covers so many subjects and has so many both books, videos, movies, links, websites, covering so many areas that I think are important for all of us to be thinking about, whether we have children or not, because we can't always rely on, people live all over, and we can't always rely on who's there or who we wish would be there. And it's an amazing book. I truly recommend that you purchase it. So, Joy, I'm delighted that you are here. And I know you've been, for years, writing and speaking about the needs of family caregivers. So maybe you could talk about what led you to write really both of your books. What got you interested in this field and in particularly writing this more recent book?
Well, I have been speaking for years about family caregiving and elder care, and about 10 years ago, something interesting started to happen. So I would finish a speech, and adult children would come up to me and they would say, I love taking care of my parents. I'm doing it, and there's nothing better that I would be doing. But who's going to do this for me? And I heard it over and over again. Now, this was 10 years ago. The rumbling started way back when, but it was too early to talk about this subject because so many of the caregivers were still young and, really in the ditches with their parents, and there was no way that they could take time to this extent to talk about who's going to take care of them when the time comes if they need caring. And so I waited until about 3 years ago when my book agent, sold the manuscript to the publisher. The publisher, they bought it up right away, and they see the value of it and saw the value of it 2 years ago, and then here it is. So this, in other words, the entire topic has come full circle.
It really has, and I've actually gotten a number of people who've written to me in relation to this topic, Joy, and said, "Oh, I'm so glad that you've had." And I had Sarah at one point too, Sarah Zeff-Geber, who wrote Solo Agers. But they said, "I'm so glad you're focusing on this topic because there's so many of us that out there that don't have children, or even if we do, we can't necessarily count on them, and it's scary. Well, who's going to be there for me?" So, and when you and I were talking, that even if people are in relationships now, if we live long enough, one or the other will ultimately become a caregiver or a care receiver. And, all of us at some point may end up being alone. So it's just, it really, I think it has come full circle because it's hitting people right in the face now.
Yeah, I've been told that the title of my book is so in your face. I mean, why beat around the bush?
Yeah. Well, it's absolutely true, and you talk about it in it. Like, let's get the elephant out of the center of the room and not be afraid to talk about any of these things.
Exactly.
So, since you've written this book, and since you've done so much talking, and I know I just said it sort of at the beginning that Joy just had been presenting at the American Society on Aging, which was in New Orleans. What are you finding are the most common concerns regarding this solo aging, since you've been out and about talking to people around the country and maybe world?
Well, what's been very interesting and a common response is what the readers and people who are aware of the challenges of aging solo are choosing to do first. So we know from caring for parents that we have to talk about money and health and, the presence of a chronic illness and choosing where to live. All those things that we dealt with our parents are indeed on our plate to think about. But one major concern that I continue to hear over and over again is that readers are telling me how frightened they are about being isolated and alone in their old age, because we look behind us and we don't see caregivers like our parents did. So this theme of friendships just keeps resurfacing. We're talking about relying on friends. Will they be there for us? Will we be there for them? It's just been an amazing theme that is just coming front and center. In addition to those other things, the friendship, the element of friendship and all its implications seems to be the number one theme and consequently that's why I'm concentrating it on going forward, because it seems to me like we all need to learn how to do this. How do we become friends, and where do we find them? And so much to do with friendships.
Can you elaborate more on that? I agree with you so much. I mean, well-being is connection, engagement, purpose and meaning, meaningful relationships. But what happens if, the longer we live, the more people we love die? And how do people, both develop new friendships, I guess, as well as nurture some of the old? What have you been learning about that?
Well, I've been learning that, and this is my typical style. It's kind of hard-hitting, but the deal is we have to take an assessment of who we hang out with. And one thing is for sure, if we have toxic and or unfulfilling friendships right now, we can't afford to keep them in our network. We really have to begin the process of seeing if people are givers for us as much as we give to them. We are going to seriously rely on each other when things get ugly. Can you take a look at your current friendships and see if you are deserving of more? Now that's current. The other thing is that you just brought up is this revolving door of relationships. So just because we have people in our lives right now doesn't mean that they will be able to be there for us or us for them in the long run. So we're all going to have to get used to the idea of making friends, being really good friends, and figuring out where we can continuously surround ourselves with people that we can trust and love in the long haul. And just keeping in mind that who's here today is not necessarily who's here tomorrow. So on that happy note, it means that we also need to put ourselves in a place that naturally brings people together. And of course, when we assess that, we're going to all come up with all kinds of different scenarios. I list so many ways in my book to find friends and have that revolving door continuously be on our doorstep.
Can you share a little bit about that now, sort of as, I guess
Sure.
it could be a little teaser for people to get your book, but I think that, particularly for people who see themselves as being introverted,
Oh, yeah.
It can feel really daunting. So maybe share some of the strategies that you've discovered.
One of the more fun strategies that I like is the one of volunteering. So it makes you feel good to do things for others, but like-minded people tend to also do things outside of that volunteering circle. So think about the things you like and then see if there are some organizations that you can join, that you can volunteer to keep yourself in a circle of people who will be naturally coming and going. And so that's one thing. I am also a huge fan and a member of an organization called the Transition Network. Dory, I think you're familiar with them, right?
Right. I'm a member of it also, but why don't you mention to people, because not everybody on the call might know about them.
So the Transition Network is another pool of possible friends. This one digs really deep. They're a national organization, and for those people who don't have a local chapter, it's also possible to be a member virtually. But that doesn't help in terms of having the kind of friends who would be at your doorstep if you need help. So the Transition Network is for women 50 and older. And they come together in a variety of ways, activities that they like, serious discussions, there's a caring connection, all kinds of ways that women can get involved. And they do have a website. So if you just Google the Transition Network, you'll find that's a possibility. So
also in line with that,
Sure.
I just want to interrupt for 1 second just to add. I mean, you mentioned about the caring connection or caring collaborative, and just to let people know, because I did at one point interview, I think it was Betsy Worley on it, but there is a template for people developing a caring collaborative. It was started by the Transition Network. It's sort of like a job bank where people would donate time helping people and then others would help them, and you kind of accrued hours. And there's a template for it that people can look at and maybe start wherever you live, because it does begin to kind of build in a way of developing, friends and people that can be part of your safety net. So I just wanted to comment on that. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I wanted to add that piece right there. So.
Okay. I think one of the other things that we need to all do is looking at our digital friends, because we have to stop believing that our digital friends are real when push comes to shove, right? We really have to get real about people who can come over and are a phone call away. So that's something that I know that we all need to be real about. So if you had to right now, if tomorrow you got a diagnosis, how many people could you write down on a list that you could call at 2 a.m? We really just need to start with the basics. Who can you call at 2 a.m. that would be there for you? And then if you don't see anybody on that list, again, you got to take action right now.
So what would be the action steps then? How do you recommend cultivating these kind of loving and trusting relationships if they're not there right now?
Well, here's something that the book has done, which is really interesting because I had no idea this was going to happen. So my book has started a movement, and it's called Let's Eat Together. And it's a campaign that is really taking off. So here's the deal. How easy is it for any one of us to begin the process of sharing meals with a neighbor or a friend, somebody you may not know now, but we all have to eat at some point, right? So if anyone is bothered by eating alone, I certainly am. I'm constantly looking for ways to invite people to my house for dinner or bringing potluck over to someone else's house and initiating conversations around a dinner table. This is the easiest way to begin a friendship.
Such a great idea. And are you finding it taking hold, that people are really meeting new people this way and cultivating the friendships?
Oh, yeah, they really are. And they're sending me emails and they're telling me about it because it's easy. And also because you can invite someone much younger to a meal. You know, we all, you know, just something magical happens when you're sitting down and sharing a meal and talking. It's food is love, food is community, food is family, you know, and it's easy. I was not raised in my Italian house. We were not raised to go to restaurants. We were raised to share meals and be together while we're eating. And it really is a wonderful thing. Home cooked meals, what could be better, right?
That is nice. What other kind of thing? That's a great idea of just, you know, this no one eats alone. What other, or let's eat together, but there's something else called No One Eats Alone, too. Isn't there another organization you mentioned, I think, in the book?
Oh, I hope there's a million of them.
Yeah, I mean, there are.
Right. The more we can share a meal, and I mean, your question was, how can we even begin this process? It seems daunting, but when you narrow it down to a home-cooked meal or sitting on a park bench and handing half your sandwich to someone else, initiating conversations through food is easier than you think. So now some of the restaurants are also becoming more aware of the important role that they play with keeping people social and together. So you may have gone into a restaurant now where instead of tables and chairs, they have long tables with benches. And this is very common in Europe. And if you can find some of these restaurants where you're sharing a table automatically, sitting down, and it's also just an easy way to strike up a conversation.
That's another way to do it.
And people may not realize if you go to a restaurant that has a bar where you can eat the meal. Mm-hmm. I have found sitting in really cool conversations with people eating dinner at the bar rather than sitting at a table all alone and feeling rather awkward, but that's just me. But sitting at a bar and having a meal at a local restaurant near my house, I typically can interact with many people who live in the neighborhood. Mm-hmm. It's pretty neat.
Yeah, no, I've found the same kind of thing. It's really, even if I'm there with somebody, if we're both sitting at the bar, we get conversations going with other people, and it's really nice.
Mm-hmm.
And even in the best of relationships, or a cooking class. Yeah, no, that's it.
Yeah, taking cooking classes, and then you can show your skills off when you invite everybody over.
Yeah.
Things like that.
That's a great idea. And you also talk in the book about how important it is to have friends of different ages, and I'm really big into that. Can you elaborate on that too? Because I think that's really important.
Well, the younger people have much to contribute to our lives, but vice versa, we do too. So it's just a natural way. Volunteering, I have found, brings young and old together. So that's one thing that makes it easier to have people of different generations.
Mm-hmm. does get me thinking about the importance of people of different generations, but also I wanted to shift a little to what can people expect, if they're aging home alone and need assistance? What's been your experience about how available it is to be able to get caregivers, or, who people can turn to? I just want to come back to that caregiving issue that you mentioned, because you said that's a big one that keeps coming up when people read the book.
In case people who are listening do not know this, and I always bring it up, there is a shortage of professional caregivers, and we can no longer expect to be able to pick up the phone and have somebody say, yes, I can have somebody come out to your home right away. First of all, it's a terribly expensive proposition anyway, but it's even worse if you have the money and you have no one there to care for you. Now, this is happening for a variety of reasons. The professionals are, it's a combination of low wages, inconsistent work schedules. People are not attracted to this kind of hard work. And so the home care industry is also losing workers to big box retailers. So they pay more. And even the restaurant industry and Amazon, now these are just serious competitors for getting the attention of people who might want to work in the home. They're being lured away, and they're going to places where it's a whole different work environment. But here's the good news, the silver lining of all this, and that is that the headlines that are coming on more and more about the shortage of professional caregivers it seems to be grabbing the attention of advocates who are fighting for reform. Now, it could take years for this problem to turn itself around. And so it will require all of us, if we have the energy to put toward policy reform, we might consider doing that and volunteering to see how we can change the environment for people that we all so desperately need to be in this space, the in-home care industry.
But it's part of then why you're talking about really the importance of evaluating who our friends are, because if there aren't going to be enough people available to hire, or if people don't have money to hire, then it becomes crucial to figure out, how do we build a safety net?
That's all there is.
Part of what I think your book's about. Yeah.
Yeah. Now I have many old people 90 and above in my circle of friends, and some of them have money, and they're lucky and many of them have children too. But the ones that I see who are quite happy are the ones who have a lot of friends, and like we've already discussed, they're able to attract people to be in their lives as friends. Of course, many of these people have a giving personality. They're givers by nature. But I will tell you that most of these people get by with their friends. This is how they do life. Their friends are helping them. I live in a situation where I live in a high-rise in the city of Chicago, and this high-rise is in a highly desirable place. Many of the people who live in this building, and I'm talking 40 floors with about 12 units on every floor, I don't know if you've ever heard this term, Dory. It's called a naturally occurring retirement community. It's NORC for short. Yeah. NORC. I live in a NORC. Every single time I'm up and down the elevator, I'm saying hello. I'm also seeing people who have things in their hands, food in their hands, and they're bringing it to somebody on some other floor. And over time, many of us never moved out because it is such a great location. So that means that we're all kind of taking care of each other. And that's what's happening. And it's so if someone, let's say, is thinking about, well, heck, where should I live? A situation like this might be desirable for that reason. It's just a plain old apartment building, but one of the questions you would ask possibly a realtor is, what's the average length of time that people live here? And if you find that they're not moving out, it means it's a good place to live.
Mm-hmm. That's such good advice. I see this happen a lot with these naturally recurring communities. I have a few clients that describe wonderful situations where people help each other. And what's interesting is that it was somebody I was speaking to the other day, some of her neighbors who are now getting to be in their late 80s and 90s are beginning to think about moving out of there with the worry that all of them are getting older and that not being sure that they can rely on each other. Have you been finding that as kind of the next stage as people get even older?
No, they're actually...
You haven't yet? Yeah.
No, well, in this particular building, people, it's all, so convenient in terms of having everything at your fingertips. Plus, when you live in a condo, you've got elevators, you don't have any stairs. Right. It's a perfectly easy environment to negotiate till you take your last breath. And I will tell you, we've had plenty of times where we have sat at the bedside of neighbors who are dying and died. And there's always a notice on the bulletin board on the main floor. We're very, very caring. It doesn't mean you have to like everybody, but for the most part, when somebody dies, we make a big deal out of it, and they never die alone.
That is so important. So it sounds like maybe some advice that if you're living in a situation, even if you haven't yet perhaps made contact with some of your neighbors, I guess it just takes one person to begin to kind of organize something like that. How did that, do you have a sense of how it came about in your building? Yeah.
Well, it isn't a floor-to-floor thing. It's usually a one floor. You get to know who you're surrounded by. Every once in a while, let's say you're going out of town and your newspaper is delivered. You might slip a note underneath your neighbor across the way and say, "Hey, would you do me a favor and take my newspaper in? I'm not going to be around for a month or so." And then now you've made a connection, or you'll meet somebody at the elevator on the same floor and you go, "Hey, my name's Joy," and that one says, "Hey, my name's Kathy," and boom, you're off to the races. And all different ages. All different ages. And a lot of these people have dogs. You want to get in a dog-friendly and a cat-friendly, pet-friendly environment. So when I need my dog fix, I go in the dog elevator, and I even babysit for people's dogs because of my travel schedule. I can't have a dog, but I'm a dog person, so I babysit people's dogs, and it's another way you can get to know people walking around with their dogs. And oh boy, it's just so many opportunities to just say hello.
That sounds great. I hope that some people are inspired to perhaps look around and just think about, it's like creating a neighborhood wherever you live and trying to get some of the interactions and helping going. What about people who just say, "I want to stay in my single family home"? And what's been your experience of because I know there are different alternatives for people, and sort of advice that you have in terms of where one lives if there isn't the naturally occurring community?
Well, for people who really, really want to stay home, the first step is to make sure that there are no barriers to aging in place. So I have this long list in the book that talks about different things that you can do. I'm sure everyone on the call has heard about universal design, and just pick up a book or two about, take a look around and see if there's something that needs to be done within your environment that will make it possible for you to stay there for as long as possible. So that's the first thing. Then Dory, there are plenty of people who love their privacy, love to stay home, don't want to make friends. That is to be respected. That's a respectful attitude, and I even know people here in my building, and I respect that. So if that's the case, just be prepared to spend time looking for professionals who will come to your rescue, and they're out there. It just may take a longer time to find them. So people who stay at home come from all different kinds of points of views. Some people choose possibly to share their home. Perhaps your listeners have heard of Silver Nest or organizations like them that put people together. Home sharing is going to be, I predict, so popular. So absolutely popular because it just makes sense. You either have a house to sell or you stay home and then you tell the network that you have a room and a home to share. So that's another thing that can be done. And that's an old world, fabulous way to be. You get somebody there, and for people who like that, it's good. It's good. I think at some point I'm a candidate for that. I just don't like to be alone. I come from this big, huge family. I'm used to noise. I'm used to a lot of crazy stuff going in and out. So there's always going to be people around me just because I'll put myself in the middle of that. So home sharing is great if you have your own house. If you choose, you could also join a village. A village is staying home and becoming a member if your city has a village-to-village network. And this way you're connected to social activities and resources and people who will drive you around if you can't drive anymore and you got to get to the doctor and so on. There's all kinds of neat ways to live. The one thing is where you live, we can't just think about the roof over our head. We have to think about how age-friendly is our neighborhood. What happens when you walk out that door? These are the things we have to think about. Is it age-friendly? Is it dementia-friendly? And is it LGBTQ-friendly? Those are the three distinctions I make in my book. And if it's not, we have to make an assessment on maybe this isn't the best place for me to live in the long haul.
And do you have a sense of how to kind of go about making those assessments? Is it just... Yes,
there are guidelines for each one. One of the things is work opportunities, and this is for all three categories. I mean, how easy is it for all of us who may need to work for as long as possible? Are there work opportunities available? Affordable housing is also something for all three situations. We have to see, hey, if I sell my house, can I even afford the rent in the neighborhood? How's that going to work, right? Or can I afford to buy another house? So affordable housing is something we all need to think about.
And you have some good resource guides and questionnaires that are in the book, too, that I think help people evaluate that. Let me integrate a few of the questions that are coming in. Oh, go ahead. You were going to say something else?
No, let's go. I'd love to hear from people.
So the person didn't give me their name, but from Boston, the question is, any other suggestions of for activities other than centered on food? He said most people don't cook these days, and eating out is not healthy and very expensive.
Right.
So any other suggestions of ways to connect with new people?
Oh, sure. Well, joining a club is my favorite, maybe a book club. There, my criteria for an activity is that it's ongoing. So not a one-time thing. So if you keep that in mind, what's going on in your neck of the woods that goes on a weekly basis, or a monthly basis. So that's the criteria. Is it a book club? Is it swimming lessons? Is it a language class? Just think about the activity in terms of ongoing. And then, the sky's the limit as to what that can lead you to. So yeah, food doesn't have to be.
Right. And the volunteering can lead to it, or getting involved in political,
Oh, yeah.
causes.
I have a really
like
cool,
that.
Yep. There's a real cool thing that I also see happening regarding volunteering. So I describe it in my book, and I'm not looking at my book right now, so I hope I can describe it right now just while I'm thinking about it. So there are so many children and families who do not have grandparents that are nearby. There are some volunteering organizations where you can become a surrogate grandparent to a local family. Now, here's the coolest thing that happens about that. So you walk into this situation, and I'm sure we have to go through a lot to be accepted. But imagine that you're now part of a family simply by volunteering as a surrogate grandparent. Now, I've read about these organizations, and they're listed in my book, but I don't have that in front of me. So there are organizations where you can volunteer to be a surrogate grandparent in a school situation, or you can actually be looking for organizations that allow you to, choose families, or families choose you. But the magic here is the relationship that happens with the entire family, and what's not to love? Now you're in the family.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's such a beautiful example that, for families that don't have grandparents, it also sort of normalizes this whole cycle of life that, they're older people, younger people, we help each other. It's a really nice model, I think. And you do have a whole extended list of resources on that. So let's see, Kathy from North Carolina says, your condo sounds great because geographical closeness is key. She says there needs to be a list of such places where people live for a long time or are older and are friendly. And she comments, I wouldn't be able to afford a condo in Chicago or any large city. And then she said, of course, there are these 50-plus retirement communities. But, it does, where you live can build in community, and I think that is an important.
Correct. You could be in a 3-story walk-up, and it isn't about the city, like you said, Dory.
Right.
These kinds of relationships happen organically. You can be in, like I said, a 3-floor walk-up. And it's just where you are, your attitude, and how we are with the people who are in our immediate surroundings.
Right. And I think you're so right. One person reaching out or, bringing something to eat when they know someone's sick, it starts it all happening. It's just whether you're living in the same building or near each other. It is sort of going back to sort of some of the, recreating a little bit about neighborhoods, age-friendly communities, neighborhoods. So, right. Meg from Weston says another source of multi-generational community as well as organized caregiving for yourself are things like, lots of helping hands, which is a virtual way of connecting people to help people after illnesses or surgeries or whatever. But there are also churches, synagogues, mosques, Buddhist gathering, other places of worship. And so all of these places, even if somebody's tended not to have been involved, might be just ways of, sort of pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone and trying to meet new people.
This is a very important point, and I'm not, not a Bible thumper, and I don't say, you need to go to church, but I will tell you that there's something about a community of a religious setting or spiritual, I should say, where people are more prone to be giving. And my church that I go to, we have a little motto, we're the family of families. And You feel it when you walk in. And it's just like my apartment building, and when I walk into the church, we're usually informed on who needs help and where, who's in the hospital and so on, and off we go to be of assistance, people driving each other around, and it's just a good environment if you're so inclined to want to go in that direction. It's not for everybody.
Thanks. So another question from Boston, but I don't have a name, is the person says, I'm really concerned about the economic factor. Many single women are strapped for money, especially women who have been downsized earlier than anticipated. The cost of housing in many cities is becoming prohibitive for the aging population. And when we move away from the city and public transportation, it limits access to social activities and convenience. And he says gentrification and affordable housing is really a concern. He or she says, I don't, know who submitted this, but thoughts on that? I mean, it is.
Well, it goes back to shared housing is a great way to take a look at the money. But I just need to back up, because if I were to put in order of importance where we need to start this process of who's going to take care of me, the first thing you got to do is look at your money. That's number one. So are you in the presence of professional advisors? There are two you have to talk to, the elder law attorney and a financial planner. And they work together. They look at you, they have an assessment, and they say, okay, you can do this, you can do that. They can move things around, and they can make sure that you're on a good track. One of the things that people don't realize is that when they are caregivers, okay, so now we'll go back to the first book and the first role that many of us take on, and that is the role of caring for parents. If you're doing this now, you've got to stop doing it, and that is dipping into your own pockets to take care of your parents. When you do that, it just means you don't have enough information on what you could be doing instead to take care of your long-term financial stability. So that's the first thing for both caregiving and for yourself is taking a look at all the different things that will help you secure your finances. Chapter 5 in my book is called The Fierce Urgency of Money. And in there, I talk about things you can do today, things you can stop doing, talks about your attitude toward money, tons of resources, and this real new concept of taking inventory of your current possessions and seeing if you're sitting on a pile of money. Because most of us have bought a lot of things that we no longer need, or maybe we need to sell them in order to have some money put back in our pocket. And then I also talk about different ways to get a job. Even if we live in the middle of nowhere and we have a computer, we can make money online. So, boy, thank you for submitting this question about financing a longer life, because that's the number one thing. If you're going to do anything, open the book and go to the money chapter. First thing.
Well, this relates to another question that actually was sent in ahead of time that I want to integrate, which is from Anne. And she said, she has two questions. She said, my first question is, since I don't have children or family and my friends are all older, would it be wise for me to retain an elder law attorney to do services like the following? Should I be unable to do so myself when I'm in assisted living or in a nursing home? And if not an elder law attorney, then whom? And the things that she mentions are pay my bills, pay my taxes, pay medical expenses, manage my real estate assets, access my financial accounts, invest on my behalf, collect any retirement benefits, transfer and sell my assets, buy insurance for me, hire someone to represent me, have durable power of attorney, and be my healthcare proxy.
Wow. Okay, that's pretty much
elder
everything.
Law, yeah.
No.
Right.
An elder law attorney is an elder law attorney or won't do, but they may have people in their back pocket. They will help with estate planning, including what what happens with incapacity and power of attorney for health care and finances and so on and so on. Clearly, this person just needs to begin. We're all going to be faced with those questions. So in order to just not be bombarded with fear on who's going to do all this stuff, we just take it one step at a time. And a very good place to start is, of course, the elder law attorney and the financial planner, because once we start addressing the subject of money, then all the rest of the balls will slowly come down. But we gotta, once we see what we've got, then we'll know where to go from there. And I have worksheets and checklists in the book that will help you just take a deep breath and take it one thing at a time, but start again with money, and the rest will fall into place as long as you're willing to do the work.
And so you're also saying that perhaps the financial advisor and the elder law attorney might know of some local resources that could help with some of these other things, that it would be important to take it step by step, but maybe there'd be other people, right?
Absolutely. There is a section that I talk about called professional advocates. So for those who can't rely on friends, we will all be responsible for figuring out who are our advocates. And those can take the answer to that question will depend on who's doing the asking and so on. Every single person is going to have a different answer to that question. Who's my advocate for this? Who's my advocate for that? Who can I count on for this, and so on. But these are such good questions because they get to the heart of the matter, and there are answers for every single one of those questions.
Right. And Anne has another question too, which she says basically, is there someone I can hire? Oh, maybe, again, she says maybe it's somebody designated by the elder law attorney's office who would come check in on me in assisted living or nursing home periodically to make sure I'm treated well. That's sort of the advocate or the ombudsman.
But you can even zone in. You can even zone in even more. There are professional medical advocates, and I list a bunch of resources in my book. So you can have somebody, and we also can hire a geriatric case manager or care manager to be with us, and maybe that's going to be our new best friend in the hospital. There are advocates that may be provided by our insurance companies that won't cost us any money because we're already paying them a ton of money in insurance. But there are resources to look into right now about advocates, and it's different from a caregiver, because caregivers, our friends, we love them, they love us, but they may not be the advocate we need at the time when we have to have somebody stand up and say, this is not right, this is what we need, this is what I think is going on, and, is a little more forceful in environments where our caregiver may not feel comfortable. But, it brings a little more depth to who's going to take care of me, right? Because some of them are just, I might have somebody come over here if I have a plumber that I don't know come over and tell me my whole house needs to be repiped. I'm like, I don't think so. Or why wouldn't we bring someone with us if we bring our car to the repair guys? Like, like that. It's just an attitude that we need to have regarding having somebody have our back,
Right, yeah. I have a whole bunch of questions here now from other people, but let me ask this next one. Wendy from Arizona says, she says, the description of this webinar mentioned that you would discuss questions about aging solo that readers don't know to ask. Can you talk about this? So
I think we've been.
Yeah, I think you have been. Yeah.
We've been talking about that all along, it's this perhaps like the difference between a caregiver and an advocate. What do I need to do first? Go to the money card. Where can I find all these resources? This is just like reading. Maybe many of you have had an aha moment during this conversation, and that was the question you didn't know to ask, because the answer to that is depending on who you are, right?
Right. And just to mention to people, we still have time, and I'm going to be asking more questions today, but just to remind people who might have come on late that on May 7th, Joy has agreed to join my Boomers and Beyond special interest group. It's at noon Eastern time, and if any of you on the call who aren't part of that network are interested, just send me an email, Dorian@DorianMintzer.com, and I'll send you an invite for that call, and it will be smaller and interaction. Everybody will be unmuted so people can ask questions then. So a few other comments and questions. So Bob from Paducah has a comment first. He says, Atlas Care Maps is an excellent resource for care planning. So just to explain, do you know about the care maps, Joy?
I have heard of them, yes, but I couldn't go into detail.
Yep. Well, if people look up Atlas Care Maps, and I'm actually thinking of maybe at some point having the person who's developed it come in and do a presentation, but just Google Atlas Care Maps, and it's a wonderful way of, it sort of ties in with what you were saying before, Joy, that, you start to construct who are your circle of people you can turn to, who's, part family, part friends, more extended family, and you can begin to develop this care map of your own, of being able to begin to see who you're going to be able to be there for, as well as who's able to be there for you. So it's just a resource for people to look. If you just Google Atlas Care Map, it's a nice resource to know about. So thank you, Bob, for mentioning it. Bob also asks, what are your experiences with senior centers and senior ministries?
I don't know what this person means by senior ministries, but my experience about senior centers is they are a wealth of information. Here in Chicago, we have senior centers that have restaurants. They're called cafes, and many of the senior centers also have that. But I'm sure hoping that they change the name so that we can attract more people to go to these centers, because they are a wealth of activities. They're a wealth of connection, and they're just filled with lots and lots of smart people. But the best thing of all is if you have time to go to a senior center during the day, and you may also be inclined to volunteer and be more of a friend to somebody in need. So it's like it meets so many needs. And of course, all the fun they have, I'm kind of jealous because I'm working and they're having a great time. So by all means, just Google the one in your neighborhood or start one, or, just they're wonderful, absolutely wonderful. And there's so much adult learning classes that are happening with language and computer, and they all go on trips together. And I see them get off the bus here in Chicago downtown, and they're having a great time.
Yeah, I think that's great. And also all the lifelong learning programs, the OSHER and non-OSHER, but often university-based, but they're great ways of meeting people, developing new friendships.
Yes.
Bob asked another question then. He says, how do you guard against potential elder exploitation, neglect, and abuse as you're developing new friends?
You have to be really careful. You don't disclose information, and just like anything else. And what's going to be really challenging for all of us, and this is why we're going to need to put our legal plans in place before anything else, is because we have to have we have to develop a relationship with either a professional or a personal friend who has the right to oversee what's happening. So that may be with a financial planner who says, noticing that you're becoming a little more forgetful, you didn't call me when you said you would, or you forgot that we had an appointment. Many of the professionals that we're going to be dealing with are now starting these agreements. They're nothing formal about it, but it is agreements, and then it's usually the wording in it is pretty informal, but both people sign it. And it's basically saying, if you see that I am becoming more forgetful, and then you list things that might happen, you need to tell me, and here is another person you also need to tell. And we begin a process with our professional advisors on these letters of intention that says it's okay to tell someone else, I'm noticing that Joy is not keeping her agreements with me like she used to in the past. I'm concerned. And we establish these kinds of relationships. So scamming, it's a tough one, but at least when we're working with the professionals, we can make an agreement with them right now while we have all things going for us and say, what can we decide together that we will do if you notice that things are not right with me? What should we do? Talk about it today with your lawyer, financial planner, housekeeper, anybody. What's the plan?
That's such good advice. And the other is, where is everything? That somebody needs to know where you have, your both digital life as well as non-digital life, what the passwords are, the accounts, who the people are, where the car keys are.
I have a thought about our digital. Yeah, I have a real concern about our digital lives. And I have a note to myself that I will begin the process of getting off the internet. I will make sure my social media does not say happy birthday, Joy, when I'm long gone. These things are popping up. I will be backing out of the internet when I decide I don't need this anymore. We must be responsible for our digital lives. And now we can put it in our estate planning, but I want to be in control of it. So I'm going to take over on that one. I'm already starting it, actually. I'm no longer on Facebook, and I will start backing out on other things. It's really important. I think there's a lot of opportunities for scams on social media. So it's just something I'm just super aware of.
It's like controlling the parts you can, because certainly there are a lot of parts we can't control, but that is one. Yeah.
Well, I'm often the executor or executrix is what the proper female term is. I don't know why. I am often that for my friends because they know I'll get the job done. And one of the things I always forget to do is to get off the internet. And so I can't tell you how crazy it is. You have to write letters to Yahoo. You have to go through hoops with all these things. And so if nothing is done, then there's about 7 years. Every internet, every website is different. But really, I have gone through the list of all my websites that I have, given my credit card, said what I ordered, so and so, and have been slowly saying delete my account. If I know I'm never going to buy from them again, I'm out of there. And I just do a little bit every week. And it's really important. I think it's really important. As an executor for people's wills, I spend hours and hours finding them, and because a lot of times they give me their passwords, and then I'm there trying to get off, and they won't let me, and they say, no, your power of attorney is no good here, and it's horrible. So maybe that's something else you could do.
You're raising. Yeah, no, that sounds, as you say that, it reminds me that I still get these pop-ups at times, saying, names of people who I know are no longer alive, to friend them or have them become part of LinkedIn or something. I haven't even thought about, that's sort of that wherewithal of needing to do it while you still are able to, because people can have all kinds of ideas, and then there can be the, if in fact there's cognitive impairment at some point, then it may be too late to be able to disengage in that way. Excellent point. Wow. So Annie from Concord says that she said, I've become involved in a senior co-housing project, of which there are 14 in this country currently. Good option to know about. She said locally it's the Middlesex Senior Co-Housing in Mass. And she said it's an intentional community. And she just wanted to throw that out as something else for people to be aware of. Bob from Patuca also said that there are professional money managers that you can hire, people who have a CSA or Certified Senior Advisor designation that can help you navigate some of these issues, because there are many different professionals, so that's helpful for people to know. And
I list these resources with website links in my book, and so all of these resources are really a great idea to take a look. The money managers and the financial planners and all the different designations. I also list them for overseas, the UK and beyond, Australia. All kinds of resources. So if you're listening from far away, they're there. But thank you for bringing all this up. This is an audience that is well informed.
Yeah. Well, here's another question from Michelle, who's in Boston. Oops, I realized we'll have to pull it together in a few minutes. But Michelle says, I appreciate what you're saying. I think we need to take a step back and look at the bigger economic picture of women. These tips might be very helpful for women in their 30s and 40s to plan ahead. For those of us in our 60s who've worked at a single female income, 70% of a man's salary, this has a big impact on how we plan for our future and what's available to us. And then she says there was an interesting article in the Wall Street Journal this weekend about, can early retirement be bad for you? And then she says, thanks for your resources and ideas, but the problem is they all cost a lot of money. And she says, I totally agree, looking at the money card sooner than later is key. And that ties into Kathy, who also said all of the answers you're giving, all of the things like in Anne's question about things that she would want to have done all cost money, and that you're so right. Everything comes back to that money card.
Okay, but I also want you to know that I know plenty of old people who don't have a dime. They are living solely on Social Security, and many of these people have figured out what is available in their cities with the agencies on aging, with social things that we would never hear about unless we did our homework. The person who brought up the churches and the synagogues, those are ripe resources for free, typically free activities. There is plenty that we can tap into that don't cost a dime. And the women that I know who are in their 90s that don't have any money, they get by with their friends. And that just kind of brings this whole thing back again, is these are the people who take care of each other. They're not living in some expensive assisted living or continuing care retirement community. They're not there. They're living together, or they're living close by, and they just take care of each other. And I've never seen anything like it until I started to really look and see, how do people who have absolutely no money do this? And I've seen it time and time again, how they do it.
That's
so
really important.
I hope it's helpful.
Piece and takeaway, yeah. So one other thing from Bob, and then I want to come back to your handout, but Bob also says, this is in response to Anne's question, he has a link here, and again, there's so many links in Joy's book, but and this is a nice one to hear about, senior check-in services, which he said there are some that are independent and you pay a fee and a person visits and does a standardized review of how you're treated. And he gave the website, which is www.linkedin.com/company/Penrose Check-in Services. So PENROSE check-in services, all one word. But people can check, I mean, that's tied in with the question about if I'm in an assisted living or a nursing home, is there a way to know that somebody will check in to make sure I'm being treated well? So I just wanted to share that resource from Bob. So Joy, you want to tell people a little about your handout and how to get your book, and then we'll
could you do me a favor? Do you have the handout in front of you?
Do.
Because I don't. Okay, so why don't you do that for me? I'm sorry, I don't have it.
That's okay. Well, there's a handout that is available for you, and she mentioned some of the topics, some of which she's mentioned here, like the fierce urgency of money, page 57. And, she on each one of these things has a comment of, like, for the fierce urgency of money, if you don't currently have a circle of friends to count on or have no intention of cultivating new friendships, then hiring professional caregivers and care-related service providers may be possible. That is, if you can afford it. And then there's just different sections like where you live matters, not just about old people, the Broken Hearts Club, widowhood, before and after, committed couples need outside friendships too, mealtime loneliness and thoughts to chew on, make new friends, your social network may be wide, but is it deep? And in all of these areas, she mentions a page to go to in the book that can be helpful for you. So I think it's a helpful handbook that can help you make good use of the book. And it's not a book that you have to read from cover to cover because different things pertain to you, so you can kind of jump around. But I know we've kind of hit on a lot of things, and our time was limited. Maybe what would be your, and so Joy, it's just been wonderful having you just have a host of information. And how would you like to end? What final thoughts? Maybe mention how to get your book, but then also what other final thoughts of advice or final takeaways for people?
The book is available wherever books are sold, wherever you're used to going, whether it's a bookstore or online. So you just Google it and it'll definitely show up on Amazon among all the others. And it's available worldwide. I think for my final word of advice is I would like to say that it's been my experience of other people, watching other people and for myself is making new friends takes a lot of, it takes a conscious choice, but more than that, it takes a lot of effort. And the question that I always walk away from is not what am I getting from this friendship, but who am I becoming? And I know we all have to be more of a giver to really reap the benefits of what happens when you have friends that you can rely on. You know, the goal is growing old with other people who love you and are going to be there to your very end. And I'm just seeing it over and over again. It's a really beautiful thing.
So I think it's wonderful to have that sense of hope of, you know, that we all, but it's important to start taking the time now to begin building in who are our created families as well as biological families if we have them nearby, but who are the people we can help and who we can count on. I mean, it's just such an important area. So, Joy, thank you again, and I really do recommend people that this book, Who Will Take Care of Me When I'm Old, is an incredibly full, rich resource of things to think about, and it's never too early nor too late. I'm a believer that whenever you're finally ready, it's time to start with the planning, but needless to say, the sooner the better, because it does take time and effort, I think, to develop the kind of friendships and caring networks that we all need. So thank you again, and thank you, Joy, and thank you, everybody, for being part of the call.
You've been listening to Revolutionize Your Retirement Radio with Dr. Dorian Mintzer. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show, listen to past episodes, or download our free retirement transition guide, visit revolutionizeyourretirementradio.com.